Welcome back to We Want Winners. Roderick Adams, how are you, sir? This evening, this late evening for us.
Excellent. Excellent. Excited about talking a little 49er football with you, Garrett.
Yeah, no,
How are you?
I'm excited too. I'm very good. I also want to say Happy Father's Day. It is still Father's Day as we're recording. If you're watching on YouTube as well, it is still Sunday. And I want to acknowledge Monday, when most people will listen on the podcast, Juneteenth. I want to acknowledge Juneteenth. I was thinking about this because this is a new federal holiday the last few years. And there's so many things that I've been talking to people about before it became a holiday. And one of the things was the Tulsa massacre, which nobody ever taught me in school. And
Hmm.
I was just like, wow, something like that could happen and it could just be sort of thrown under the rug. So this year for Juneteenth, I do have the day off, but I'm going to do some research and read up on some of the stories that we were never taught. And you know what I bought? And I haven't read this book since college, but I bought The Invisible Man, and I'm going to reread it at some point. I won't be able
One
to.
of my favorite books of all time. My uncle gave that book to me when I was 13 years old, and it like literally changed my life.
It was my favorite book that I ever read in school. It has nothing to do with anything that I ever studied, but just one of those things where you had the right teacher and the right book, and really just fascinating stuff. And so one of my goals for the rest of this year is just I'm going to read through that book again and look at it through the eyes of someone who was in their 40s rather than someone who was, in their late teens. So I think that'll be fascinating. But let's get going with some 49er stuff here. And we don't really have a giant, I would say, rundown. It's like not anything that I was able to put together scouring through the blogs and through the Athletic. Really the end of OTAs. We're kind of in waiting mode until the preseason starts. And so there's not a ton to talk about, but there are a few stories out there. The one major one, I guess, if you can talk about an unsigned rock star, that is Nick Bosa and his contract. And kudos to him. He was there at the OTAs, so it's not like he didn't go. We know what happened last year with Debo, and Debo himself acknowledged this year that the holdout sort of affected him a little bit, and maybe there's frustration in just having to deal with that contract. And we know he was a running back and a wide receiver, and he wanted his value, and he struggled last year. Didn't have a great season. Also was injured, but he mentioned that was part of it. He thought was just this back and forth with the team and not having that thing locked in. And remember when he took the 49ers off his Instagram likes and such. What did you think of Debo's comments before we even get to Nick? Were you surprised that he acknowledged that as being part of the frustration for last year?
I mean, that was what I was going to circle back and ask you, but okay, well, I'll start. I do. I mean, it's understandable that you know the NFL is of all the professional sports, it is your window to make your money is the shortest, and it's got to be stressful. When you feel like this, this might, the way his deal is structured, it's possible that he gets another bite at the apple at another, because theoretically at 28, he could still be, at the top of the league type player, but there's no guarantee of that. So I imagine it has to be sort of stressful, um, especially with if what I believe to be the case is true, that Parag is kind of a dick when it comes to negotiating contract, which is that's
That's
his
his
not
job. Yeah, that's his
to be
job.
perfectly clear, that's his job. His job is not to be, his job is to protect the interests of the team and to try to drive the hardest bargain and get the best deal that he can
Mm-hmm.
for his employer. So I say that not as necessarily a dig, but I imagine that every negative thing that him and his team can, you know, throw at you is what is, you know, that's just part of a negotiation, which is why I believe you should have an agent, because it in that kind of environment, I believe in any kind of environment, if that is the tone and tenor of a negotiation, it's hard for you to go through that as the employee.
Yeah.
And then once everything is settled, now everything is cool.
Yeah.
That so you shouldn't hear any of that stuff, which is why I think it's weird. It's not weird. In this day and time, players are more involved than ever in their negotiations, which, I mean, that's fine. I mean, it's your business, so you should be involved in it. But I don't know that it's wise to be in the trenches. I believe your agent should just give you a recap of how it's going. I don't think that you need to be hearing every negative stat and report about, well, there was one Wednesday when he came to lunch and he was,
Yeah.
I know I've never negotiated a contract to the level of Devo, but I have worked in contract jobs, and that's how this shit goes.
Yeah.
They're looking to lowball you, and anything when you were late 3 days, they'll use anything they can to lower your value. That's just what they do.
Yeah.
So I can imagine the way, especially because it seemed like that was at points was a pretty acrimonious negotiation.
Yeah.
So, I could see where that could mess with him. And then, but I think this thinking about his comments, and then when you told me that this was the topic, I kind of was doing some research of my own. And what do you think there is a value in not having that kind of acrimony heading into training camp? Or do you think that it's fine just to have to negotiate that shit all the way up to the time, and then, because it is our history that the
Yeah.
deals get done.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has gotten done. We haven't had any holdouts, but everybody has had to fight to get their money. And
Do you
I don't.
remember the famous one that didn't get done before the season started? And this isn't 49ers. This is actually one of our rivals.
Oh, which one?
1992 or 93.
Emmett.
Emmitt Smith. His deal doesn't get done. Dallas loses the first 2 games of the season. That deal was done before week 3 started.
I just think that is I mean, I understand driving a hard bargain if that is how you know, as a business owner, it would be my job. I would strive to be fair. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be trying to nickel and dime a dude, to get the best price. But that's just me.
Yeah.
But so if that's how you want to do it, and it seems like that's what Jerry, his deal is to try to, you know,
It's business.
yeah, and
It's a
that's fine.
and that is the probably the tact that every owner wants Jerry to take, right? Because he's the most powerful guy. If Jerry does it, then when we do it, then we have sort of consensus, and that's why the ownership group in the NFL is, one of the strongest groups out there. Like the players, I feel like the players in basketball have a little bit more of the leverage than players in football. And baseball can be 50-50. I think baseball players have actually gotten the raw end of the deal in the last 2 labor negotiations. But historically, they were the ones who were able to fight for the most early on.
But even in that case, that them taking the shorter end of the stick has only moved things closer to the middle, because there was a time there where they had their foot on the owners' throats.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but what I think that business, um, viewpoint neglects is there is a personal side to this business that it doesn't really, I mean, because I guess if you think about like coal miners or salt mine workers, they're putting their lives on the line when they come to work every day. I guess in police,
Yeah.
like that. But in sports, really, the NFL is different in that these dudes literally are putting their lives on the line when they go out there. So that's why I think any money that they get is wholly worth it, especially when you look at not only not being melodramatic about putting their lives on the line, but when you just look at what the trajectory of the lives of NFL players looks like at 50 and 60 and 70 for the sacrifices they made to play this sport, it's hard for me to sympathize with billionaires about an extra $1 million to this guy or that guy, especially when you know you're going to cut off their insurance 5 years after they are
Yeah.
out of the league. So yeah, so they should, I think they should get their money, and I think it I understand that that's just the way we do business, and that you know we're going to drive a hard bargain, but I don't think that it's not necessarily conducive to I can see where a guy, especially if it's a team leader, if he's got to fight tooth and nail to get his money, there's got to be kind of a sentiment that, I mean, goddamn, if they'll do him like that, then what in the hell, what are they going to do? If Lamar has to fight tooth and nail to get his money, if I'm Devin Duvernay, what chance do I have of getting a fair deal off the rip? I
Okay,
don't, not much.
I'm going to mention a book that I'm reading, and it will feel like a tangent. It's a small one, but I'll wrap it back into kind of the discussion we're having. So, Howard Bryant wrote a biography on Ricky Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. It's a study not only in Ricky on the field, but it's a study in perception and how athletes, especially African American athletes in the 80s, were viewed, like just stereotyped all to hell. And Ricky was very much at the forefront of being like, I'm going to play, but I'm going to use my leverage to make sure that I feel like I'm being valued and I'm getting what I'm worth. And Joe fan, and think of the baseball fan demographics at that time. I don't know how different they are today, but the world is definitely different. We're talking 45 years ago when Ricky came in. And so the Joe fan perception was, these guys get to play a game that I would play for free. So thus, whenever they bitch and moan about money, they're just being selfish. And the flip side of that is, well, if the players are complaining about money, then that just means the owners are not giving them what they think that they're worth. So you're siding with the owners in that argument. And I would say, I mean, as a kid, I was definitely lean player, because I just couldn't understand how Michael Jordan could make $3 million and be the best player in the world, and Scottie Pippen could make $2 million, and they were just like on these long contracts. And in reading back and going through the history of how that worked is, in the NBA, you would draft this young man who may not have, more than likely came from a poor background, and you would dangle this contract in front of his face that says, look, for 5 years, you're going to be making more money than you ever believed that you were going to make. And because of growing up poor, and, my mom, she would tell me stories of her childhood. They're Japanese Americans, but their parents, were not necessarily born in the U.S. So, being Japanese in the U.S. post World War II is not the
Was
greatest time in the world,
was a
right?
rough ride. That's a rough ride.
And so she would tell me just like the poor person mentality. Like you have this you have society telling you that because you are poor, this is how you had to deal. And so you can imagine these NBA players like Scottie Pippen signs this long-term deal because it's security for him and he doesn't have to worry about being poor for 7 years. But instead, what he does is he locks himself into this contract
That he
when
outperformed.
that he way outperformed, and he had an owner that said, "No matter what, you're going to live up to your contract," and that's that. So, just this idea of value of an athlete and how much somebody is worth. Now, the NBA today, Bradley Beal just is in the like. I don't know if it's a done deal, but he's going to be traded to the Suns. And I was looking at contracts for the Suns. Devin Booker, who's a fantastic player. Devin Booker's at the end of his first, I think it's his first big deal, and he'll have to sign one after next year's season. And the estimate for Devin Booker is that by the end of his next 5-year deal, he'll be making $65 million per year. So that's just the NBA salary cap for superstars is increasing. So we have come a long way from Ricky Henderson having to, basically scrape for what he feels is his value to now, but still in the NFL, I feel like the NFL is really built on a lot of these old stereotypes because of the idea that athletes are short-term investments in because of what you just said, which is football's a violent sport. And only the quarterbacks will get these really long-term deals because these teams lock the quarterbacks in knowing that they're the face of the team, knowing that they're the marketing avenue of the team, knowing that if you don't have one of these 10 guys, there's a good chance that you're not going very far. And so the quarterbacks have it on lock, but everybody else is really on these shorter deals. No guarantee, the guarantees are smaller. I remember when I was growing up, my next door neighbor, he would say, "Oh yeah, did you hear, X, Y, and Z signed this contract?" I was like, "Yeah, wow, that's a giant contract." And he's like, "It's not really. Like, look at the guaranteed money." And so then
all that
I'd look at the
matters.
guaranteed money and it'd be like, 5-year deal, $75 million and 14 guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really the number is
That's the number.
14, not 75. So the
Yeah.
NFL,
All the rest of it is funny money.
right, the NFL has these funky cap gymnastics and everybody restructures to fit more guys in, and you're basically pushing, you're either getting more money up front or you're pushing it into the back end of the contract. And so that aspect of football, more so than any other sport of the big three in the US, I think leaves some distrust with the players because if you sign this deal, like, and we're going to talk about Bosa's deal here in a second. If you're Nick Bosa and you go, okay, I'm signing this 4 or 5 or 6 or $7 million deal, that after that third or fourth year, more than likely they're going to come back to you and say, can we redo this? We'll give you more money here. We're going to push it here. And you're probably not going to say no because they're going to make it beneficial to you in the short run. But your contract is not really your contract in the NFL, and it's going to get moved and changed and restructured, and they're going to take money here and they're going to put it here. So I can imagine for NFL players, the trust in the organization, knowing that you are sort of seen in the way that you are, the second Nick blows out his knee, which he's done once, and he loses 0.3 of a second off the line, he's really no good to the 49ers anymore. And then it's, see you later, buddy. You got to find another team and you got to, someone who's going to reinvest in you. So I say that to say this, which is there's going to be stuff coming out. Oh, Nick Bosa. Oh, he's going to, he wants the world. And I'm like, brother, you get that. Whatever that number is, you go and get it. And I don't know if you saw his quote, but they asked him, they said, Aaron Donald's highest paid defensive player. What do you think? And he says, I think I'll get what I deserve. So,
yeah. And he's got an agent that is going to get, at his exit interview for the season, he said he wasn't worried about being the highest paid player because he doesn't have to, because that's his agent's job is to
Yeah,
worry about him being the highest paid player.
absolutely.
So yeah, that's a nice thing to say, because I think he understands. He grew up in a football family. He knows how the fans are. That's like, of all the things, especially our fan base, which is just the weirdest thing. The most frustrating thing to me is how these overwhelmingly labor based folks end up siding on management side anytime there's a contract dispute. Why would you care what the suits? I mean, what do you care about Jed's money?
Yeah.
I don't give a damn. Give him, take it all, Debo.
Jed
Take it all.
Jed could get out of the 49er business, and now really he's kind of the face, but it really is, I think, still more so his parents' money than it is his
Mhm.
money. He could get out of this 49er business and probably get, what do you think, 9 or 10 billion for the Niners?
That was something that it is slow. It's a slow news cycle, and that was something that I postulated in one of the groups 2 weeks ago. Is PIF comes to Jed. The current value of the 49ers is roughly $6 billion. PIF, which is the Saudi sovereign fund
Mhm.
that started Live and whatnot, they come to Jed and say, we'll give you 18 billion. Again, I don't know. The sovereign funds were just allowed in this last NBA CBA to buy into franchises. So now sovereign funds can own portion. They can't own them directly, but they can invest in funds that own
Sure.
NBA teams. So I know that Saudi money is coming to the NFL at
Mhm.
some point. But the question was, just in a hypothetical world where it was legal, if they come to Jed and say 18 billion for the 49ers, how does he say no? You know, I use Jed as an example because he's the owner of my team.
And he's
But
not one of the richest guys either.
exactly, that was what I was gonna say. But it that applies to all the have-nots, especially the old guard owners. You know,
He's got
Mike
more money
Brown,
than Mark Davis, by the way.
Mike Brown, Mark Davis, Jed York. They are NFL owners, just like the Allen Trust, um, Stan Kroenke, the Waltons, but they ain't the same. I
No.
mean, they are not the same in terms of, you know, Jed and those guys. You know, when you look at Forbes and it says their net worth, it matches dollar for dollar with the value of their franchise.
Yes.
Whereas the Waltons, I mean, we're giving him money. They're making money every day. Um, completely apart from the NFL. The NFL, the Broncos are a small. I mean, not even. It's like just not even a. It's like a hobby. I mean,
Yeah.
their money is so long. You know, the Hunt family in Kansas City. There are a lot of very very rich families
Oh,
that own
yeah.
NFL teams, and then you got Mark Davis, and whose daddy hustled that team
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Um, so it's not the same. So I think that if it becomes a point where um, these old guard owners can find some rich pockets, I think that I know that there's a mechanism that makes it very difficult to become, basically they got to vote you into the club.
Yep.
But the fact is that if by voting you into the club, they're able to increase the value of their franchise. I don't see, like I say, if somebody was to come to a Jed or a Virginia McCaskey with a sweetheart offer that is triple the value of the franchise, I have a hard time believing that NFL owners are going to be voting against bringing that money in.
Yeah.
because
So
it rises all ties.
you mentioned the Waltons. I listen to a podcast. It's a business podcast called Acquired, and they basically study companies and successful companies, the origin story, all the way through current day. And they just did Walmart not too long ago, and that story of Walmart was really fascinating because it was run. I mean, it was a mom and pop shop that they franchised, and back in the day, it was all dollar stores and these really cheap goods and such,
Mm-hmm.
and they created Walmart out of that. And I've also listened to another podcast on Wondery, the Wondery app, where it's Walmart versus Target, and they kind of talk about the back and forth of both of
That's
those.
interesting. Both of those, I need to, I'm gonna need to start taking notes, Garrett. You're dropping some gems today. All of that sounds very interesting. I'm definitely gonna check those out.
Yeah.
It was on a cross country drive that the power of Walmart struck me, because I mean there are a lot of places where these little dinky towns,
Yeah.
that's all there is a Walmart. And but it was just, that's the type of stuff that fascinates me,
Oh,
is
yeah.
like McDonald's and like Walmart, and how the Walmart in Podunk, Arkansas can look just like the Walmart right down the street from my house. I mean, the ability to run a large operation like that under, very, very organized and standardized SOPs is something that is just, it's a wonder to me to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, all that stuff is amazing, but Bezos and Elon Musk, we're going in a different direction,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
just
Mhm.
the ability to how rich you can get, um, is it's really we have the some of it's kind of it's not sad. I guess it is kind of sad, but to have such rich people and to still have poor people, it kind of boggles your mind, right?
Yeah.
Like, how
Because
can you
it
still
just seems
have
like,
poor people when the economy can give you this as well? So,
right.
all right, let's talk a little bit more about Nick. And before that, I wanted to shout out our guy Shelvin. Shelvin is the most loyal guy for us. He's our guy. Love Shelvin. Happy Father's Day to you,
Happy
Shelvin.
Father's Day, Shelvin.
Hope that you had a great day with the fam. And so I did I did a small bit of research, not a lot. I just looked up a list. Now I don't know. This is from January of 2023, so about 6 months ago. This list was published, and this is the highest paid player by annual average salary provided by our good friends at Spot Track. Now,
Mhm.
the problem is, here's what I don't know, which is what we just talked about, which is the guaranteed money. But
I've got that too.
their list of the top 5 players on the defensive side who make the most money on average goes like this. Well, we'll start from number 5 and go up. There are 3 guys tied for 5. Jeffrey Simmons, defensive tackle, Tennessee. Max Crosby, defensive end for the Raiders. Khalil Mack, linebacker for the Chargers. Myles Garrett, defensive end for the Browns. Now, those guys were 23.5, and Myles Garrett was 25. Joey Bosa, it's a familiar last name, sitting there at number 3, won it with 27 million. And TJ Watt is number 2 at 28, and the number 1 guy on average is Aaron Donald at 31.6. So I would imagine that part of this calculus for the 49ers is whatever that number becomes for Bosa. By the time that they finish this contract, he is going to be ahead of Aaron Donald in that Spot Track list, because that matters. not only to probably matters more to the agent than it does to Bosa. But what like what does it tell you about the NFL when you see those numbers? Because those numbers look pretty big, and we just got done saying the only players that really get paid are the quarterbacks, but those numbers for defensive players look really, really large. Uh is there any sort of magic tricks going on here, or do you think that the NFL is really getting better at paying their top stars?
Well, you got several things going on. Is that the influx of that gambling and TV money has just made the salary cap is gonna go up by what I saw the estimate is like between 17 and $20 million for the next 10 years
Yep.
over the life of that TV deal.
Yep.
And so the players, just by law, they get, I think the number is 53% of the gross revenue is how the cap is calculated. So that's fixed. How it's distributed amongst them is what's at issue amongst the players. But so the C is rising for all the players. But what's interesting on this list, and I wanted to ask you, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, is what do you think Bosa and his team want to prioritize versus what the 49ers want to prioritize? In that, Aaron Donald is by average annual value the highest paid defensive player, but he only got 46.5 only got $46.5 million guaranteed at signing
Yeah.
because he signed a shorter term deal. His deal is only 3 years. Because ever since 2 years ago, he has been talking about retiring and
Right.
whatnot. Whereas Bosa, or no, so it was Watt is the leader in the clubhouse with total guaranteed at signing, which was $80 million. So my question to you was, what do you think Bosa will value or prioritize? Will it be being both the highest annual paid and the highest guaranteed at signing? Do you think they would have any appetite for signing a shorter term deal like Debo did, with the thought that um, if I'm Nick and I sign a 3-year deal, I already know that Michael Parsons is most likely in the next year and a half or 2 years going to reset the market. So whatever I sign for this offseason, Mike is going to reset that market in 2 years. And then if I'm on a 3-year deal, when he does that, I can go get another bite of the apple. That would sound, I understand it's not the risk that I'm taking, it's the risk that he's taking. But I would think that would be in play. But I know if I'm the Niners, I don't know that I want to be in a situation where I have to, go do this dance again, with a 27-year-old
Yep.
Nick Bosa, who is still, barring any kind of injury, which should still be in his prime. So what are your thoughts on that on both sides? On what do you think Nick would be or should be prioritizing versus the Niners?
I looked at ages of guys who are in the top 5 or so, and Max Crosby is the only guy who is as young as Nick is, and his guarantee is so much smaller than the other guys that we talked about. He was only guaranteed 26.5, Whereas you already mentioned TJ Watt. Bosa's was at 78. Aaron Donald was guaranteed. What was he guaranteed? 46. So I think if I was Bosa, what I would want is a, let's say, 5-year deal where I could opt out of 3 after the 3rd year, for the reason that you just suggested, which is I want to see how the market resets itself after 3 years. Now, what the 49ers would probably want to do is go, well, we'll pay you more guaranteed up front without that opt out, so that they could keep him for much longer and maybe sort of predict that he's going to still play at that high level and he'll still be one of the higher paid guys. But because of what you just said, I don't know, it was about 5 minutes ago, which is they signed this, NFL signed this 11-year television deal to an obscene amount of money. Now, in 11 years, we're talking 2034. What is cable going to look like? When you and I were growing up, or, when we were young adults, ESPN was probably in 115 million households or something like that. ESPN is currently in about 70 million households. So you're talking about a shrinkage rate right there of a high number. And it's only going down. Now, cable may plateau to where maybe the bottom is there will always be around 40 million people subscribed to cable. So what the NFL did is they went, yeah. We'll still have some games on the NFL Network. We'll still have some games on ESPN. But what we really want to do is we want to make sure that we're going back. We want a heavy dose of broadcast TV. So Fox, Sunday Night Football, CBS, like those are the main players for them, because what they realize is, who knows, in 3 years, maybe the cable industry just explodes and dies and we're tied up in this cable money. Let's make sure we have the broadcast money. And at the time I was like, wow, that's interesting. Like, they're not really betting on streaming that much. They're betting on broadcast television. And
but go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, so the point that I was basically trying to make is, when you are the most powerful entity in television and you make this deal, which basically says like, yeah, we believe in broadcast, and you sign like this giant television deal, what they're going to be able to do with that money and these teams is not endless, but it's nothing that we've really seen. Now, the NBA had an interesting thing, and I'll again, small tangent, I'll tie this back in. The year before Kevin Durant came to the Warriors was the beginning of the new CBA and the new TV deal with the NBA. And the NBA Players Association had an opportunity to take this spike of money that was coming in and they could smooth it out and stretch it out over multiple years. And they voted to spike it in the 1 year. So all of a sudden, thanks to this spike, now the Warriors have room to add Kevin Durant to their salary cap. And then we know the whole thing, right? So the NFL is going to have this influx of money. Like you said, it's going to keep going up. So Bosa's agent knows that. And I don't think he's going to want to lock Bosa in to a point where, 2 years down the line, Bosa's not in that top 5 list, and he may be lower in that top 5. He may be like top 10. And you want to have the ability to restructure at that point, because like I said, the teams are going to restructure because it benefits the salary cap and the overall team. And football is this thing about, you're part of a team and, you're rubbing your backs up against the wall with your teammates. And it's this, this war metaphor, sometimes this military metaphor. And they use that because, hey, Nick, we want to bring in somebody to to take some snaps off of you because, we know it'll make you better. And he's about winning and he may agree and like, yeah. I'll restructure so we can bring in, whoever the next, end is to help the 49ers. And so to answer your question in this long-winded way, I would sign the 5-year deal. I would sign the flashy deal where he's the highest paid player in the NFL on the defensive side. But I would also give myself the opportunity to opt out and reset everything because, like you said, it's going to go crazy. And people who are all about getting their money right now will take the money. And then in 3 or 4 years, if they're still at that high level, then they're going to be upset that everyone around them is making more money.
That is where I landed on it as a player. I would be willing, whichever one. I wouldn't press on both. Whichever one means the most to me. Okay, I'd rather be the highest paid per annual basis. And I would take a little less long-term guaranteed money to secure those opt-outs. Because I understand it's negotiation. It's hard to say I want to be the highest paid annually and I want to have the highest paid guaranteed money and I want to be able to opt out in 3 years. I mean, that's going to be a hard negotiation because where is the win in it for the 49ers? That's all bad for them. So in a perfect world for them is that okay, it's going to be either or. Either we're going to give you a ton of guaranteed money, fully guaranteed money, or we're going to give you a bunch of money. Obviously he's going to get a big signing bonus, but then we'll pay you annually at the top of the league. But we can't give you all of that. So I think I would prioritize, having the option, the ability to opt out. But there were two other things you said. Number one, that just doesn't make sense to me. Can you imagine at your job if they came to you and said, "Hey, Jimmy, we want to pay Mike a little bit more. Why don't you go ahead and take this pay cut so we can give Mike some money?" I love Mike, but Mike's getting paid. It has nothing to goddamn do with me. That you guys need to work that out. And two, if I'm a player and anybody that I love, if they come to me talking about renegotiation, we gonna be on the Bobby Bonilla program. Sure, we can renegotiate, but you can give me $1 million for the next 30 years.
Well,
if we want to renegotiate that way, I can do that.
And here's the thing, right? Is the 49ers would probably say, we're not taking anything away. We're just sort of stretching it out. You're still going to get it. You're just going to get it in a different way. And if I am that person, I go, well, I'll take it now because I can invest it right, and make more money than you're going to pay me for that length. So that it's an interesting cat and mouse game. And, it's also what makes sports so super interesting. Shelvin had a note that I think you were kind of leading to. Shelvin wanted to know how the YouTube game,
I was thinking about that
season
as
thing
well.
was going to go. So this is fantastic for the NFL. This is fantastic for Amazon. We saw the Amazon deal last year. Now, the Amazon deal, if you looked at like the average viewership, the streaming was down from the normal numbers, but where they rose was in younger audience. And that's where their bet is in the younger audience, because you can lock in. They feel, now this is old school sort of television ratings and marketing and stuff. The idea is between the years of 18 and 49, I don't know why the number is so huge, but the belief is that demographic, that number of people are not yet locked in to what they are going to basically be locked into for the rest of your life. So if you're Bud and Michelob, you're hitting that's the audience you want to hit because you want to change them to your beer essentially.
Mm-hmm.
The older you get, the 50 and ups, even though those of us who are a little older, we actually have a lot more money than the 18 to
Mm-hmm.
49s. They feel like we are locked in to the brands that we are going to be loyal to at that point. So that's why this number is so important. And so the Amazon number, I think it's the 18 to 34 number, so they even shortened it. Like that number was way, way, way up, which makes sense because young people more than likely are going to be into streaming and not as into cable. Cable's expensive. You can go. Oh, so to that extent, Amazon's number, while lower on the average number of viewers, was actually higher in the demographics that the NFL wants to reach, which is why I think that they're okay with that number as long as that number doesn't continue to go down. So the Amazon thing is, I think a lot of people want it to fail because they don't like going to Amazon and having to open up the app to watch the game. But I think as long as that number stays around the same, more people are going to be subscribing to Prime. More people are going to be going there. So that'll be fine. But now the YouTube question, this one is interesting because this is where the people who subscribe to the ticket, uh, those are your hardcore hardcore of the hardcores, right? It is if I had moved, like say I went to go, live near Shelvin, I don't get the 49ers locally, and so I would have to buy this ticket to watch every single game. The data is going to be fascinating because YouTube is going to be able to track everything. Now, I don't think they're going to make that data very available to people, but they're going to know to the second. Like let's say Shelvin gets this YouTube direct ticket. They're going to know by the second what screen Shelvin has showing and which one he's got the audio on when he's in the 4-box thing, and which, does he do the fantasy channel or not? And they're going to have so much data that I think they're just going to rev and rev and rev and rev and rev. So this version of the YouTube product will probably be very similar to the DirecTV product, just on a stream. So I'm a little worried on week one if they're going to be able to hold that stream for everybody because it's brand new. I would imagine it's going to get so much more personalized as the years go by, which will be cool. Might be a little creepy and Big Brother-ish at the same time. But they didn't pay all that money to get this thing for, just to have it. They want a relationship with the NFL. It's going to help their live TV sales because if you are a subscriber to YouTube Live TV, you're going to get a discount on this package. And if you're not a subscriber to YouTube Live TV, you're going to pay, whatever the full price is. I think even more expensive than the Direct TV thing. But this is all about learning about viewership and doing it at even a more granular level than current TV is able to do because they just don't have the data. So I think it's a fascinating study. I just hope that it doesn't screw up and people get mad because I think there's been a couple years where first week on direct ticket and the thing was just not working. And I mean, can you imagine first week of the NFL and you can't watch your team because of stupid technology?
That's
So that,
crazy.
yeah.
But yeah, the thing that struck me in the earlier conversation when you're talking about cable viewership is that YouTube. I mean, it's impossible for an ESPN or any cable entity to have the eyeballs that YouTube has. I mean, theoretically, if you got a phone, anybody with a phone has access to YouTube in a way that, you know, the barrier to entry for ESPN, let's say, is a lot higher than it is for YouTube. Now, I'm not saying everybody can afford YouTube TV or the ticket or whatever, but theoretically, you have more. And I think as we move forward, I don't think, I've heard people theorize that it's going to be as expensive or even more expensive than it was on DirecTV. But I think it's going to be the opposite because just like you said, this is not a revenue play for your YouTube direct ticket money. They've got they can monetize you in so many different ways. It could be kind of like the cell phone thing, like back in the day, they give you the damn phone.
Yeah.
Because that for the phone companies,
They're
for the
making money
cellular
off you for
companies,
2 years.
the money wasn't in the phone. So just like you did a beautiful job of laying out for YouTube, the money is not in giving you access to the football. The money is in um the access to your watching habits and the data that they're able to accrue by giving you access to that football. So YouTube is gonna monetize this shit to death on the back end. So yeah, I it's gonna be fascinating to watch and see how this plays out. And like you say, that you mentioned it and I hadn't really thought about it, but it's going to be interesting to see how personalized as we move forward your viewing experience becomes as an NFL fan through YouTube being able to give you what it is that you want. What you might even not even realize the way you want it. They're able to give it to you in a way that is specifically tailored to your watching habits because like you say, they're watching you watch, so
Yeah.
they know exactly what you want,
Yeah.
so they
No.
can give it to you in a way that you know that keeps you coming back.
The other small part of the, and not even a small part, but YouTube now has a foot in the door with the NFL. And you become one of their providers, and the next time, these rights come up, and like I said, maybe in 11 years cable is completely done, and maybe even the way we currently watch TV has changed. I don't know if anyone saw the Apple virtual reality goggles. Those are insane. But I would imagine in 11 years we're still watching on giant televisions, but the interconnectivity to the internet will probably be at a much bigger level. So, if you're YouTube and you're like, okay, we're doing this, and then in 11 years, your growth of your own product, of your own TV product is actually valuable, then you're like, hey, NFL, we can do some of this stuff in a much bigger way. Let's dance. And that is really the in for them, is for the next, after this 6 years or whatever, or the 11 years that they're going to have, on the stations as we know it. At that point, YouTube's going to want to slide in and go, okay, now we're ready to do the big deal. So that's the stuff that is going to be super interesting. But again, who knows what's going to happen in 11 years?
Mhm.
The way that we watch TV may be completely different than we do today. So
Hell, in 11 years, by then there could have been a gambling scandal that takes this whole thing down.
oh man, yeah, I know they're slapping guys on the wrist now for sure. Unfortunately, I
That's the only
it's a
thing I
slippery
think
slope.
see stopping it is some kind of widespread cheating scandal that could this other than that, this thing it appears to be a juggernaut that just prints money and just keeps on growing
Yeah.
at just a astounding rate. So it's gonna be real fun to watch, and I'm not rooting on its collapse because it's something that I enjoy immensely. But it's just man, it's like, damn, can it really to grow at this rate? But I don't see anything stopping it. It just continues to get bigger and bigger.
And they're gonna add more teams, and they're gonna
Rogers trying to
continue to
get into
grow.
Europe and trying to get overseas. It's just it's just and he's in a place where it's like everything he touched turns to gold. So it's whatever ideas they have. It seems like they're it's they all work. Because I just think because the product is just so compelling is
Yeah.
is what I think it is.
even though old school guys like you and me were like, "Ah, back in the 90s, football was better." But you have to be able to evolve with the times, and the
Yeah.
NFL has done so better than just about anybody else, even though they have also had the most hiccups when it comes to national issues,
Yeah.
and they are not the most sensitive of the organizations, that is for sure, but it hasn't hurt them, or they've been able to bounce back. But you
Yeah.
know what's so awesome about doing this with you is I came into this show and we were texting and I was like, Bosa, that's the only thing I have. And you sent me some other stuff that's kind of like evergreen stuff that we could always go back to. And I was like, oh wow, well, maybe we'll do like a half an hour. We'll just cut this thing short. We talked about NFL contracts, Nick Bosa, NFL TV deals for now almost 56 minutes. So that just tells you how fun this show is. Me doing this with you, that we can talk almost a full hour and hit one thing on the topic list. It's pretty
Yeah,
amazing.
I wasn't really worried, but yeah, it is because it's magic, man. We make magic. I mean, this
I
is
love it.
I just I look forward. That's why I sent you a text, kind of asking where we're gonna do this because I know it's Father's Day, and I would understand if you didn't. But it's something that I really look every 2 weeks, and
Oh
I
yeah.
can't wait till we get back on a weekly schedule. But yeah, it's something that I really look forward to doing. And I know at least Shelvin is listening. So so that's three of us.
There you
So
go.
yeah, I mean I enjoy it, and like I say, it was we were able to stretch that one topic. We got the hour in.
Yeah, there you go. So we'll hold off on the other couple of evergreen topics that you had, maybe
Hmm.
for last time, for next time, or though
Yeah.
maybe more stuff. But I will give one more recommendation. I mentioned that podcast called Acquired. They also did an episode on the NFL,
Oh,
which was
really?
awesome. It
Okay.
was excellent. So you talked about Al Davis, and that's what kind of triggered it in my mind because Al Davis is obviously a big part of that because this whole AFL and NFL thing. But listen to that. I want to say it's like a 3-hour podcast. So they
Oh,
really get
wow.
in the weeds on it, and they talk about things that I felt like, oh, I know the history of this league, and I was like, oh wow, I didn't know that, I didn't know that, I didn't know that, I didn't know that. So it's a really good listen for someone who enjoys the history of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I think you would
I'm
enjoy that
definitely
one.
gonna be listening to that tomorrow.
All right. So thanks to everybody for checking in with us. Like I said, I hope you had a great weekend. If you are a father, hope you had a great Father's Day. Juneteenth on Monday is today, and I'm taking this one and being really present in mind about this holiday. So thank you to Rod for being here and doing this with me. I'm Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.